It's December 21st, 1989, Palace Square in Bucharest. The temperature hovers just above freezing, and over 100,000 people have been assembled in the vast square below. This isn't a gathering of supporters who came willingly. Many were pulled directly from schools and factories, given no choice in the matter. Some have been standing in the bitter cold for more than 5 hours now, their breath forming clouds in the winter air. They're all waiting for one man, Nicolae Ceaușescu. For 24 years, he has ruled Romania with absolute authority, transforming the country into one of the most repressive states in Eastern Europe. His secret police, the Securitate, have created a climate of fear so pervasive that neighbors inform on neighbors and even family members can't be fully trusted. But now, cracks are beginning to show in his iron grip. Just days earlier, something unprecedented happened in the western city of Timișoara. A Hungarian Reformed church pastor named Laszlo Tőkés publicly criticized Ceaușescu's regime. When authorities attempted to arrest him, something unexpected occurred. The local population refused to stand by. They surrounded his apartment building, forming a human shield. They chanted, they protested, and they didn't back down. Ceaușescu's response was swift and brutal. He ordered his forces to open fire on the crowd. Historical records document that approximately 93 people were killed in Timișoara, though initial reports during the chaos suggested far higher numbers. The exact toll remains a subject of historical debate, but witnesses describe bodies being transported at night and hasty burials outside the city. But instead of intimidating the population into silence, the massacre ignited something that had been smoldering for years. News of the Timișoara killings spread rapidly throughout Romania, despite the government's attempts to control information. Protests erupted in other cities. The unthinkable was happening. Romanians were openly defying Ceaușescu. Panicked and desperate to reassert control, Ceaușescu made a calculated decision. He would organize a massive rally in Bucharest, broadcast live on national television and radio. It would be a show of force, a demonstration that he still commanded the loyalty of the Romanian people. The images would be beamed across the nation, thousands cheering their beloved leader, denouncing the troublemakers in Timișoara. It would be the greatest miscalculation of his life. As Ceaușescu steps onto the balcony of the Central Committee building, overlooking the sea of people below, the square erupts with sound. Orchestrated cheers roll across the crowd. He raises his hand in acknowledgement, his face stern but satisfied. To anyone watching on television, it appears to be a triumphant moment. But something is deeply wrong. The regime has carefully arranged the front rows with party loyalists, workers bussed in from factories, and students pulled from schools. These organized supporters wave flags and portraits of Ceaușescu on cue, creating the illusion of enthusiasm. The rest of the crowd stands largely motionless, their faces blank. They've been assembled not by choice, but by compulsion. Ceaușescu begins his speech. His voice, amplified across the square, carries that familiar tone of bureaucratic authority he's used for decades. At first, everything proceeds according to plan. He thanks the organizers. He begins to denounce the fascist reactionaries and foreign agents responsible for the unrest in Timișoara. And then, approximately 8 minutes into his speech, something happens that will change Romanian history forever. From somewhere deep in the crowd, real sounds begin to emerge. Screams, shouts. These aren't coming from the organized front rows. They're human voices, raw and unscripted. The camera wobbles slightly as the cameraman reacts to something happening off-screen. On the balcony, Ceaușescu stops mid-sentence. His hand raises in a gesture meant to restore order, but his face betrays something rarely seen before: confusion. For just a few seconds, he stands frozen, clearly hearing something that wasn't supposed to happen. "Someone is shooting," his wife Elena shouts, her voice sharp with panic. She moves closer to him, her own composure beginning to crack. "They're entering the building," a security guard yells from somewhere off camera. The truth is that demonstrators have broken through the barrier surrounding the square. They're no longer the silent, controlled crowd the regime expected. They've become something far more dangerous. People who have overcome their fear. And they're pushing toward the Central Committee building itself, toward the very balcony where the Ceaușescu scanned. The cameraman, following his specific instructions for exactly this scenario, tilts the camera upward toward the sky. For Romanian viewers watching live on television, the screen suddenly shows nothing but gray clouds. But the audio continues, and what they hear is chaos. Both Nicolae and Elena lean forward, shouting down at them, "Stay back! Stay back!" Their voices have lost all authority. They sound like people who suddenly realize their power is slipping away. "This is a provocation," Nicolae shouts, though it's unclear whether he's speaking to the crowd, to his security team, or to himself. "A provocation by foreign agents!" Somehow, the security forces manage to push the crowd back behind the barriers. The immediate threat seems to pass. The camera returns to Ceaușescu's face, now visibly shaken but attempting to regain composure. He continues his speech, his voice less steady than before. In a desperate attempt to win back support, he announces sudden wage increases and higher pensions, concessions that would have been unthinkable just hours before. But it's too late. The spell has been broken. For the first time in a quarter century, Romanians have seen their dictator flinch. When the rally finally ends, many in the crowd refuse to disperse as ordered. Instead, they spread throughout Bucharest, their numbers growing by the hour. 24 years of repressed anger, grief, and frustration pour into the streets. The city that had been silent for so long suddenly finds its voice. Ceaușescu, still in the Central Committee building, is enraged when he receives reports of the continuing protests. His response is characteristically brutal. He orders the military, riot police, and his feared Securitate secret police to crush the demonstrations by any means necessary. The phrase he uses, "any means necessary," is understood by everyone to include lethal force. And they comply. According to historical documentation, soldiers opened fire on protesters in the streets. Those who tried to barricade themselves inside buildings were targeted by snipers positioned on rooftops throughout the city. The night of December 21st to 22nd resulted in significant casualties. By morning, cleanup operations were underway throughout the affected areas. Ceaușescu, reviewing reports of the crackdown, allows himself to believe he has won. "Everything will be back to normal now," he tells Elena. "The machinery of repression has worked before. Surely it will work again." But before dawn, new reports begin arriving. Massive columns of workers are leaving factories across the city and marching toward the center. And this time, something fundamental has changed. The soldiers and police sent to stop them are refusing orders. Instead of firing on the protesters, they're joining them. Some tear off their insignia. Others hand their weapons to the demonstrators. The apparatus of state control is dissolving before Ceaușescu's eyes. The morning of December 22nd, Ceaușescu holds an emergency meeting with the remaining members of the Communist Party leadership in the Central Committee building. But even as they meet, hundreds of thousands of protesters are surrounding the building. The sound of the crowd is overwhelming, a roar of voices that penetrates even the thick walls of the regime's headquarters. They're breaking down doors, they're flooding into the lower floors. Ceaușescu makes a frantic call. He orders his pilot to land a helicopter on the roof of the building immediately. There's no discussion of staying and facing the crowd. There's no last stand, just pure survival instinct. Both Nicolae and Elena are visibly terrified as they're rushed to the roof. Their faces are ashen, drained of all color. Nicolae's legendary composure has completely evaporated. They have to be physically supported by bodyguards as they stumble toward the helicopter. Along with two senior officials and two bodyguards, they squeeze into the aircraft. The helicopter lifts off just minutes before the protesters reach the rooftop. Below them, the crowd surges onto the rooftop, watching the aircraft disappear into the distance. The dictator who controlled every aspect of Romanian life for nearly a quarter century is now fleeing for his life. The pilot heads north towards Snagov, where Ceaușescu has a residence. Once on the ground, Nicolae desperately tries to summon military assistance. He orders the pilot to arrange for 2 additional helicopters filled with loyal soldiers to serve as an escort. Surely some units remain loyal. Surely someone will come to his aid. The response, when it comes, is devastating in its simplicity. They're on their own. No one is coming. The military has abandoned him. The pilot urgently convinces the Ceaușescus to take off again immediately. To lighten the load and increase their chances, they leave the 2 officials behind. It's every man for himself now. The pilot heads west toward Târgoviște, hoping to reach a garrison that might still be loyal. Then the radio crackles to life with a message that seals their fate. All flights are grounded. Any unidentified aircraft will be shot down. They have no choice. The pilot puts the helicopter down beside a road between Bucharest and Târgoviște. And just like that, Nicolae and Elena Ceaușescu find themselves standing on a roadside with only 2 bodyguards. The rulers of Romania now reduced to fugitives. After some time, they manage to flag down a passing car driven by a doctor named Nicolae Ceaușescu, although some accounts say it was a bicycle mechanic. Whoever he was, he agrees to take them toward the town of Târgoviște. As they drive, the Ceaușescus listen in horror to the car radio. The broadcasts announce the victory of the revolution in Bucharest. A new government is forming. The Ceaușescu era is over. The driver suggests they hide at an agricultural research institute on the outskirts of Târgoviște. When they arrive, the director of the institute, recognizing who they are, makes a fateful decision. He ushers them into a room and then locks the door from the outside, trapping them. He then immediately calls the local police. Within hours, both Ceaușescus are under arrest, handed over to a military barracks in the city. The new government, still fragile and unsure of its grip on power, makes a calculated decision. Nicolae and Elena Ceaușescu must be tried and executed as quickly as possible. A swift, public end to the Ceaușescu regime would be the clearest possible signal that the old order is finished forever. On December 25, 1989, Christmas Day, Ion Aniescu, the new head of state, signs a decree establishing an extraordinary military tribunal. The trial will take place immediately at the military barracks where the Ceaușescus are being held. The charges are devastating: genocide, destruction of the national economy, and attempting to flee the country with over $1 billion stashed in foreign bank accounts. As the accusations are read aloud, Nicolae simply laughs, a strange, bitter sound. Perhaps he believes this is all temporary, that loyal forces will still rescue him. Or perhaps it's the laugh of a man who knows exactly what's coming. The trial is brief, lasting approximately 2 hours, and is largely theatrical. There's no real possibility for a proper defense or appeal. Nicolae refuses to recognize the legitimacy of the court, calling it illegal. Elena, standing beside him, is defiant and insulting, berating the judges. But none of it matters. The tribunal finds both guilty on all charges. The sentence? Death by firing squad, and it will be carried out immediately. Nicolae attempts to appeal the decision, but he's denied. As they're about to be led from the room, Nicolae makes one final request. He wants to be executed alongside Elena. The guards agree. A soldier returns with rope to bind their hands. Both Nicolae and Elena resist, arguing that there's no need for restraints, that they won't try to run. But the soldiers are insistent. Their hands are tied. They're led into a courtyard and positioned against a wall. In these final moments, different accounts offer different details. Some witnesses report that Elena begins screaming insults at the firing squad in rage. Others say she breaks down crying, the defiance finally cracking.
Nicolae, according to most accounts, remains relatively calm. In his last seconds, he begins singing the opening line of the Internationale, the workers' revolutionary anthem. It's a strange, almost surreal final gesture from a man who claimed to represent the working class while living in luxury and crushing any dissent. The firing squad opens fire. Nicolae and Elena Ceaușescu died together against that courtyard wall on Christmas Day, 1989.